5 catchers, 1 position, and a whole lot of questions, plus 3 winner-take-all games today. Let's talk about it next on Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Pirates. I'm Gary Morgan, and today we kick off a new series, Positional Review. We'll build the 2026 depth chart position by position, starting with catcher. We'll also dive into today's wild card madness and what Ben Cherington's confirmed return means for the offseason. So let's get started. Positional review, catcher. This is something we're going to do with every position around the diamond, and we're going to take it to the pitching staff too. And a lot of the motivation to do something like this right now is, first, we're before the decisions have to be made to tender guys. We're before all the promotions and protections for Rule 5. We're before all of that stuff right now. We're to the point where we don't think they're going to spend a lot more. They've decided to bring back their GM that none of us trust, right? So why get super excited about all the things that could or should be taking place on the free agent board or trades that we think that they should pull off? Before we do that, let's lay a baseline of going through what we actually have right now. And let's see if we can talk our way through the roster and come up with our depth chart, because we may not like the roster. We may not think this roster can win, but we do have players, and we do have players that we need to find homes for. And if they don't do anything, I think what we're going to see is we're going to put together a team that probably isn't poised to take a big step back, even if this GM doesn't do anything. In fact, it might be preferable that he doesn't do anything. You know, a little bit of foreshadowing for segment 3 today. Positional review. Yeah. I would say if we were to rank the guys that we have in-house right now, you're talking about Joey Bart, Abrahan Gutierrez, Endy Rodriguez, Henry Davis, and, of course, Rafael Flores. Ranking their gloves is difficult right now. Henry is the best right now, period. He's the best at handling the pitching staff. His numbers don't lie in that regard. He's been terrific at it. I can't really put some kind of an evaluation on Rafael Flores right now because I only got to see him for about a week, and I only got to see him catch twice. So, and I didn't notice anything that really scared me away with him. Maybe he's a little bit sloppy on, some of the balls that are outside of the zone. He doesn't even attempt to frame them. I guess you'd prefer a guy that's trying to frame everything, but some catchers consider that to be wasted energy, and I kind of find that hard to disagree with, especially with the ABS coming. Who cares, right? It might not matter. I still think that you can be a lazy receiver of the ball, though, like and cost strikes. And that's something that I feel Joey Bart's very guilty of. He has a very nonchalant way of receiving the ball, and while it doesn't always cost a strike, well, sometimes, like, if you're catching that borderline strike and your arm just casually carries it out of the zone as opposed to freezing it in place so the umpire really gets a good look at it, that can cost some strikes, and it does cost strikes, and we've seen it cost strikes. Abrahan Gutierrez, by all accounts, very good defensive catcher. The bat came along a little bit this year. He got hurt, though, and I don't really know what his status is going to be heading into next year. But he was an interesting player, I thought, for an option this year. Sullivan ended up getting the call up instead, but I thought Abrahan Gutierrez had shown enough that he was at least able to catch at this level. I don't know if he can do anything else. And then you got Endy Rodriguez. I don't even know. I mean, Ben Cherington is going out of his way to not roll him out as a catcher. Okay. Now, most of those comments came before they acquired Rafael Flores. So maybe their mind has changed a little bit on Endy. Maybe they'll see him more as, somebody that can pitch in elsewhere. But Endy's skill set is kind of weird, and his arm is a big question mark. I don't know if I could put him back behind the dish with this elbow issue, because like the last thing I need him to do is to be going out there and throwing just as many pitches basically as a pitcher if this is an issue for him. You're going to want to move positions. He's got experience elsewhere. He's played second base. He's played first base. He's played in the outfield. I would suggest Endy Rodriguez is a guy that I'm putting an outfielder's glove on and putting him out there more for team need than anything. Catcher is enough of a question for him physically. And I think the Pirates have enough decent options here at catcher that I don't feel a need to play with it. Put him in the outfield where you could use the bat. You've loved his doubles power before. You've hoped it would grow into home run power. Put him in the outfield and let's see what happens, because first base is clogged too now. I don't see Endy out-dueling Spencer Horwitz or Rafael Flores for first base time. And that's just two of the options. So I think catcher might have to be out for Endy. Now, what do you do with Joey Bart? Joey Bart's going to require taking him to arbitration. That doesn't mean that they can't do it, because collectively between he and, like, let's assume you would start the season with Henry Davis. You might even start the season with 3 catchers if you went that route, because I think Rafael Flores almost has to make this team too. So that's 2 catchers already. I just don't see Joey Bart getting taken to arbitration here. I think they're going to let him go the way of Connor Joe. That might be the best thing to do. He ended up getting his average up to an acceptable level, but it wasn't great. And the lack of power was just awful this year. It's like the one thing he really, really needed to provide, because we knew his defense was subpar. I'm very disappointed in that. I think it's pretty clear that Henry's got the inside track here, and he's got Rafael Flores right on his tail. If Rafael Flores can show that he can handle the pitching staff and he continues to be an interesting bat, and assuming Henry doesn't come back and hit, because that shouldn't be ruled out either, I would think like that should be a pretty good 1-2 punch. And the way that this team wants to handle their catching position, they really value the rest aspect of it. So I think you were going to be looking at probably a 3-4 split, almost like what you saw with Joey Bart and Henry Davis this year. Maybe with the difference being, if one of their bats really shines, you might see them find opportunities for Flores at first base or DH. You might find opportunities for Henry at DH or something. And that's a big jump. Don't laugh at me, because, again, I'm assuming that he comes back as a more valuable bat. And I'm making a contingency plan for if they both are. So 2 things that I think we can say from this catcher evaluation. I don't think they need to get anything from the outside. Maybe you disagree with me. I'd love to hear it. I think I'd go into next season with Henry and Rafael Flores, and I'd have Endy as kind of like a guy who's capable of it. Abrahan Gutierrez is a guy that you could call up as a nice backup option. He could easily eat a bulk of games if you had a big injury. But as long as you're not petrified of Flores behind the plate, which they let him do it earlier than they let Henry. You know what I mean? So they must not be nearly as petrified as they were of Henry. And Henry certainly got better. Why can't Flores, right? So if you feel comfortable with those 2 being your catchers, then I say let Joey Bart go. Let Endy Rodriguez go too, as far as catching goes. And just move him to a position of need and see if you can turn him into it. You certainly can't waste time sticking him at second base. He's not going to beat out that horde. And you can't waste time at first base because he isn't going to beat out that horde. In fact, it should be questionable as to whether he beats anyone out for anything again. Catcher is a deep position that performed horribly this year. Defensively, it was great. Offensively, not so much. And it's got to come along. But I feel like this is the mix of players it's coming from. Again, I don't think that I'd go outside at this position, and I'd love your feedback. Tell me what you think. I think they have enough. Let's take that quick break. We come back. Let's get into some wild card chaos. We got 3 decisive games going on today. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Money, 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 everybody. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Hey, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. So segment 2 today is going to be all about wild card chaos. It's been fun. There's only one team that's been eliminated so far, and that is the Cincinnati Reds. Boy, did they get beat up by the Dodgers. 18 runs they surrendered to the Dodgers in those 2 games. Man, we'll have to talk about that one day here when it's not quite so raw. But after we get through the season entirely, we get into the off season, and I mean the official off season. I think I want to have a talk with you guys about whether it's more painful to do what the Pirates did this year or more painful to do what the Reds did this year. You know, where you just get boat raced in your playoff appearance that you slid into. As a fan who's been deprived of the playoffs for a long, long time, I think I'd rather slide in still. Better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all, basically. But I'm not taking any joy in it, honestly, because I feel bad for them. They did a lot of the right things. They did a lot of what I wanted the Pirates to do, hired a solid coach to help get them to the promised land and help push things over the edge, and that's exactly what they did, ever so slightly. So Tigers and Guardians have Jack Flaherty going against Slade Ciccone. Yeah, this should probably be, I would say, sided towards the Tigers a little bit, if only because, man, they have looked like the better team all year long. I look at the Guardians' overall numbers, and I still don't understand how they have to be the worst offensive team that's ever made the playoffs. I mean, they're just bad. Like, they really are. And I say that after they just, put 6 on the Tigers. So we'll see what happens. It's a decisive match that these two teams know each other. They fought each other all down the stretch. It ended in a virtual tie. I think Cleveland won the division basically by owning the record against the Tigers. But boy, it'd be a shame for the Tigers season to end this way. It really would. Not that I'm against the Guardians. Again, Jose Ramirez is one of my favorite ball players, but you can't look at that Guardians team and think they're going another round. Whereas I feel like if the Tigers would get their crap together, Scooble's going to get you 2 wins in a best of 5, right? Like that feels done. I feel like the heavy lifting gets done there. It just seems like such a pity to miss out on such a great pitcher being involved. And I really would love to see Tarek Skubal move on more than anything. The Yankees and Red Sox, they went back and forth. They're 1-1. Obviously, all these teams are. But this is an interesting matchup. Cam Schlittler, and I intentionally am trying to say his name properly, versus Connolly Early. It's 2 rookies in this historic rivalry. The Red Sox and the Yankees, both of them fighting for their playoff lives, right? And the Yankees, after the record they put up this year, they probably feel the same way about this 3-game series as we did about the 1-game series that bounced us a couple times, right? But 2 rookies, I would expect this to be bullpen heavy early and often. As soon as Schlittler's pretty good, and early looks interesting at least. But I think those 2 will get basically a speed bump before managers are flying out of the dugout to replace them. It's a do or die game. You could see as many as 8 or 9 pitching changes in this one by the time you get to the 7th or 8th. I'm looking forward to it. Padres versus the Cubbies. Yu Darvish goes home to Wrigley Field versus Jameson Taillon. It's going to be an interesting storyline. Let's talk about some of the people that performed so far. Mookie Betts had a really down regular season, but he was on fire against the Reds. My God, 667 average, a 1.700 OPS in those 2 games. Kike Hernandez is just doing what he does every single October, hitting 500 with a 1.125 OPS. Shohei Ohtani and Teoscar Hernandez each launched 2 bombs, setting the tone early in that series. The Yankees and Red Sox, Aaron Judge is doing exactly what you'd expect. Not hitting home runs, but he's hitting over 500. Ben Rice hit a gigantic home run to spark the Yankees. David Bednar, Pittsburgh's own, notched his first postseason save for New York. Big moment for him. The Red Sox, this is interesting. They're being led by the veterans. We've talked all year about this young group that the Red Sox have been developing and building, and it just goes to show, even if you get that part done, when you get to the playoffs, who performs for you? Trevor Story and Alex Bregman, right? At the end of the day, when you get to the playoffs, even if you're that team, the Reds, that sneaks in, right? At some point, you gotta have that veteran savvy. You gotta have that guy that's had the experience. You gotta have that dude that's been there and delivered. You know what I mean? Like, I think this is a lesson for a lot of teams. The Red Sox probably have a better chance in this game because they have guys like that. And I just think it's an oversight, an overlooked part of building a lot of these teams on the cheap. You still have to do that part of it. You still have to bring in that guy that gets it. And I just would love to see I'd love to see it continue for the Red Sox. It's not that I hate the Yankees. It's just I think the Red Sox have done a lot of things the right way. They had balls the size of grapefruits to trade Rafael Devers when they did. I mean, they traded him when the team was really struggling and actually got better and made the playoffs largely because of that run. And it isn't like they got back a whole bunch of right now help for it. They did wonderful things with that move. That was a smart way to go. And they don't have a safety net because Bregman is probably going to choose, free agency this year. He's got an option. So it's not like they have that all locked up and they're going to be just as good next year. They just went for it this year. And I really hope they're rewarded for it. The Tigers, Javi Baez is leading the charge for Detroit, showing flashes of his prime. He kind of has been all year. The resurgence of Javi Baez has been insane, and he's one of my all-time least favorite players, so I take no joy in it. But I'm liking the Tigers despite him. But the series felt like a coin toss. It honestly felt like, Detroit didn't want to be in the playoffs. I mean, the way they were playing down the stretch. But the Padres tonight versus the Cubs, they've got firepower, but the Cubs are scrappy and unpredictable. You don't know what you're going to get out of them. And the funny thing that I'm just going to say right now, we don't know what the wind at Wrigley is going to do. If the wind is blowing out at Wrigley, God help everyone. Who knows what's going to happen? If the wind is blowing in, this could be nothing in the 7th with these two guys going. So I just think they've been really interesting matchups. As much as we complain about baseball being broken, and financially it is, like, disagree if you like, but sorry, I'm never gonna change my opinion there. But the game itself, when you get to the playoffs and you start incorporating in that drama, that's what it's all about. I mean, we had a sacrifice squeeze the other day to win a game in a playoff. And I mean, we probably haven't seen that 5 times all regular season. Everything's on the line in the playoffs, everything's different. And that's what you love about it. High drama. So enjoy this one. And after this, the rest of the field will be set and we'll know what's going on. We'll see if those teams that had to do scrimmages to keep themselves fresh got stale while they were sitting around. It's going to be fun to see. I can't wait. The playoffs are always good. When we come back, I want to talk about Cherington returning a little bit and specifically ask you guys a question about how you'd like it to move forward now, just knowing what you know. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every single day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. With football back, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less than 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. I've been playing PrizePicks a little bit lately. It's such a fun way to stay locked in on the season, no matter what's going on, even if you aren't in touch. Sometimes I do it on the NBA just because I feel like it. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. There's nothing like catching a baseball game live, the energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person. But actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. Queues, login screens, surprise fees. It takes all the fun out of it. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives you the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by a Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. The app makes it super simple. You can even see the exact view from the seat before you buy it. And I already mentioned it, but it's super important. Know your total up front. The fees are included with no surprise fees at checkout. Download Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Hey everybody, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Hit that subscribe button for me and drop a like. I forgot to ask you in segment 2 like I usually do, but go ahead on and do it now if you don't mind. So Cherington is back. We know it. There's no more guessing. We don't have to wonder. And all of your veiled threats that you would that you would toss at me about, you'd rather him just not do anything if he's here. And I think you said it all at the trade deadline. And I'm wondering now that we're at the off season, do you feel the same way? I mean, we think the budget is probably going to look fairly similar. I mean, they've created some room because they've dumped some salary and they've got some room to do things. But I think all in all, you probably see salaries stick around the same thing. So that's not going to leave a whole lot of room for anybody to go out and sign a bunch of guys and whatnot. We can get into all that later. But my big question for you, what I want you to answer for me, would you rather see Ben Cherington take a big swing, or play it safe and just trust the system? Which would be less dangerous? I ask this because, like, I think, like, trading somebody like Mitch Keller for MLB ready offense makes a ton of sense, right? But do any of you really trust him to do it? Like, do any of you really trust that he knows what that looks like? And then I have to ask too, when we talk about MLB ready offense, do we really understand like what we're asking for? Because it seemed to me that a lot of you were very upset about the acquisition of Spencer Horwitz. And he was, despite his injury, MLB ready offense, right? And he hit over 10 home runs. It took him a while to get going with his power stroke, and I expect him to hit 15 next year, 20 even. But that's a guy that is probably best case scenario for the type of hitter you're going to acquire. Nobody's going to give you, you're not going to get Seiya Suzuki for Mitch Keller. Do you get what I mean? And you're not going to get anybody's like number 1 overall or something. And even if you did, that number 1 overall, damn sure, isn't as highly touted as the one you got in your system already. So I think if you're going to trade somebody like that, you want somebody that's going to have an immediate impact. I just think you're going to have a hard time shopping for that without eating some salary. I could make a really good argument for why the Pirates should go out and try to make a trade with Boston Red Sox for Trevor Story. The Red Sox have Marcelo Mayer coming back from injury next year, promising young rookie. They're paying Trevor Story an awful lot of money to play the same position they're going to want him to play. Maybe they slide him to third after they lose Bregman, and this is all off table. And this is just the rantings of a madman watching playoff baseball. But let's just say something like that was on the table. Well, he comes back and he costs more than Mitch Keller, but not a whole lot more. He's got a few more years and he's too old, and he probably won't be as good as he was this year, next year, or the year after that. But he's a legitimate shortstop that has that playoff pedigree that I'm talking about, you needing desperately if you do manage to sneak in. And he fills the shortstop role. Then you use Connor Griffin in the outfield or whatever. Who cares? You want his bat more than anything anyway. And if Trevor Story eventually becomes a bench role guy, okay. Or maybe you slide him to third base and let Connor Griffin take over shortstop. There's ways to go if you want to do something like that, need some salary. I don't believe for a second this team will do that. But that's a direct swap of MLB pitching talent for MLB hitting talent. The one costs a little bit more. Yes, we'd be the one taking on that extra salary. But they get a proven pitcher that can eat a lot of innings for them, and they've struggled to keep a healthy staff together. We get a hitter who's experienced and he's done some good things and has playoff experience and can certainly man a position. He's got health issues. So, it should be something that both teams would be interested in. That sort of thing, they're exceedingly rare. Go around the league and try to make your own up. Look at the contracts of some of these guys. See if you can find a real marriage like that. I don't think you will. I don't think you'll find a whole lot of them. And when you do, they're going to tend to be guys that are in their first or second year. They've hit 10 or 15 home runs, maybe, if you're really lucky. And for some reason, that team doesn't think they're going to grow into anything, and you do. That's what you're looking for. You're asking this guy that you don't trust to thread a needle. And I'm asking you, would you rather they just avoid all of that crap and just play their kids? Just be done with it. If you're going to bring in Tommy Phams and, Andrew Heaney's and people like that just aren't going to move the ball forward, would we be better off? Would you be happier as a fan if they just decided, screw it, totally internal? Like, let's just forget about even playing the game with this general manager. That's what I ask you. I think it's an interesting question because, again, I didn't respond to all of your comments as we went through this season, but so many of you told me that you didn't want him doing anything at the trade deadline. And now that we're at the offseason, do you feel the same way? How far are you willing to take that? There's a part of me that thinks right now they're pretty much step back proof if they don't make any moves. I think they have enough guys that are going to grow and enough guys that are going to bounce back and enough guys that are just going to keep being good that they're not going to get worse if they don't do anything. I can't promise that if they start making trades. If he decides to trade Mitch Keller for a bunch of prospects to get the money off the books in a claim that he's going to go out on the free agent market and then replace that salary with a hitter, well, I got to tell you, a $15 to $16 million hitter isn't going to come here for one season. So you better be willing to do it for 2 or 3. And then you better realize what $15 to $16 million really buys you. It buys you, albeit a guy that has performed great, but it buys you, like, at best, like a Teoscar Hernandez type. You're not getting like an upper echelon roster moving dude for that. You get what I mean? So be careful what you want from Ben Cherington here. What are you really comfortable with? Let me know in the comments. No matter where you're listening or watching this from, let me know in the comments or find me on socials. I want your opinion on this. Should he sit on his hands or should he do something? We're just getting started with positional review. Catcher's done. Next up is first base. And as always, if you've got thoughts, hit me up. Let's build this 2026 depth chart together. Let's go, Bucks.